Jay, that's strangely close to Daniel Jones from the Giants. Daniel, is that you? Beat the Chiefs. Show me. If the Broncos and Russell Wilson can show me that they can beat the Chiefs, then I will start believing.
The crowd up. And so are this defense, and Kansas City won't snap the ball again. The Denver Broncos have beaten the Kansas City Chiefs.
David Montgomery on the Lions, former Bear, gonna make this his revenge game for sure. David Montgomery gets the touchdown that ices the game. No! And there's a flag. There's flags. There's flags. There's flags. There's flags. Snap. Hold. Kick.
Denver wins! Denver wins! Let's go!
They open. No!
What happened? Oh shit.
Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the only football podcast. Tonight, we're going to be giving you guys some NFL news, some stories around the NFL. Getting close. We're getting close to preseason football. But just before that, we're going to give you some updates on what's been going on during the offseason. We're going to touch a little bit more on the AFC South, heading into some stuff about the Bears. And then, of course, we're going to end it all off with the Chives. With Kyle. Let's get it. America is football. Football is America.
Football is America. If you don't like it, you can kiss your candy ass.
For the moment in time, I don't give a damn.
Oh my god.
No.
You love this.
30 to 27.
No.
Chiefs win. Chiefs
No.
win 30 to 20. Woo!
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the only football podcast. The only podcast where we only talk about football.
Only.
Today, Monte Kiffin has passed away. It's actually, sorry, I was so hyped up into that transition, but that is what I wanted to start with because I don't like ending on these notes. And Monte Kiffin, the father of Lane Kiffin, he played a huge role in the NFL, and he will always have his fingerprint in the NFL. For 13 of his 16 seasons, he was with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He served as a defensive coordinator on all-time legend Tony Dungy's staff. And Kiffin and Dungy built the vaunted Tampa 2 defense, is why I just said that he will live forever. He was an iconic member of the Buccaneers family. The entire organization mourns his loss today, along with football fans across the world. And all I can say is it's you can only dream of when your time comes, whenever that is, that you can have something that remains, you know, that something that remains and outlives you. And Tampa too. I mean, I bet there's a lot more depth to Monte Kiffin than just football. But I don't know those things. But I do know that the Tampa 2 defense is going to continue to be in football for years to come. He was really passionate, energetic. His leadership style resonated with his players. There was guys like Warren Sapp, Derek Brooks, John Lynch, Rondé Barber, who he got all of them into the Hall of Fame. And then off the field, Monte was kind, genuine, gracious, and always had a positive attitude. He was very special to the Bucs organization and our family. We send our heartfelt condolences on Only Football to his wife, Robin, his son, Lane, his daughter, Heidi, and the entire Kiffin family.
Absolutely, man. And like you said, I mean, this guy was a staple and will continue to be a staple in the NFL and college. I mean, combined more than 50 years of NFL and collegiate football under Monte Kiffin's belt there. And, you know, his son, Lane Kiffin, coach at Ole Miss. He's been very popular in collegiate ranks as well. I believe he was in the NFL too for a little bit, if I'm not mistaken. Regardless, though, like you said, all of our condolences go out to the Kiffin family right now. What a great long life Monte Kiffin was able to live. But anytime there's a loss, dude, it's felt. It is felt, and the last thing you want is to lose somebody. But yeah, he's going to continue. His legacy will be that Tampa 2 defense, as well as every person and player he coached, because there was nothing but great things said about him from former players. So RIP to Monte Kiffin.
Yeah. And now we're going to roll kind of into another legendary coach who is spending his first year outside of coaching for the first time in my entire lifetime. Of course, we're talking about Bill Belichick, who has just kind of went into uncharted territory here this season, gets let go. He not fired, mutually agreed to part ways. Somebody of Bill Belichick's stature is not going to get fired. They were all class in the way they did this, but then Bill Belichick, his phone doesn't ring. It doesn't ring with Atlanta's vacancy. It didn't ring with Seattle. It didn't ring with Tennessee or Carolina. And we all kind of wondered, okay, what is the next season of Bill Belichick's life going to look like after he didn't land a coaching job? And a guy that loves football as much as Bill Belichick, he's going to have plenty of time to spend talking about football, but he's going to do it on camera this year. Belichick will appear on Inside the NFL this season, joining guys like Ryan Clark, Chris Long, and Chad Johnson on the weekly CW show. In textbook Belichick fashion, he was ready to cut to the chase on the promo created to announce his inclusion. 8-time Super Bowl champion coach Bill Belichick joins Inside the NFL this season. Rick, what do you think about somebody like Bill Belichick being on television? Because it's kind of funny when you think about the guy that's been known for the last 25, 30 years for having no personality whatsoever is now on TV. And usually they say, hey, this guy has a television personality, which means you're fun, you're charismatic. Bill Belichick, those aren't the words he used to describe Bill Belichick. Maybe that's or is it just because he's so smart that they want somebody of his brain in the room? What do you think about this move?
100%, man. I mean, when you have one of the greatest head coaches of all time all of a sudden not have a job in terms of coaching in the NFL, you want this guy's intelligence, his insight, what he would do, similar to when Tony Romo just burst onto the scene doing play-by-plays or color, whatever it was, and everybody was like, this guy's awesome, right? I feel like the same will go for Bill Belichick. Like, they want that insight. They will, at least for this season, because I think by not the 2025 season, he will be coaching somewhere. But it is, I definitely believe that. I totally definitely believe that. But it is funny when you kind of look back and you see some of his press conferences and you're just like, this is the guy, after taking certain parts of him talking to the media, he answers questions straight to the point, cut and dry, no frills, nothing, no little details that are unnecessary. He gets straight to the point and he answers the questions directly. What I will say though is he is one of those guys who speaks about the art of punting or field goals, and he goes into great depth and he talks about one of the greatest punters, one of the greatest kickers there was in the NFL, but from years ago. So he's got a ton of insight. All he does is watch, coach, study football. That is why people know his name. So to go on to Inside the NFL alongside, like you were saying, Ocho Cinco and Ryan Clark, I feel like that's a pretty good balance right there. You got outspoken guys like Clark and Chad Ocho Cinco, and then you got Bill Belichick coming in with with his comments, with his just knowledge of the game. So I think it does bring a good balance inside the NFL. But again, I don't see him going more than the 2024 season without a job. So I feel like it is going to be an awesome year with him on there. There's going to be a lot of clips of him saying stuff. There's going to be a lot of takes from him, obviously, during this season. But yeah, man, it's going to be entertaining. So I'm already like looking forward to like the clips that are going to be on like Twitter, that are going to be on Instagram. That's going to be a fun season.
Yeah, and the last coach that was probably somewhat at his caliber that was, I don't want to say fired, because this guy was also not fired, is Sean Payton. Sean Payton walked away from the New Orleans Saints, and a lot of people, including myself, wondered what he was going to do, and he didn't take a coaching job the following season. And what did he do? Well, he ended up signing with Fox and was on FS1, and he made regular appearances on the Fox halftime show on Sundays. He showed up for Colin Cowherd on his show, who also works for FS1. So these guys that just love the game so much, there's really no way for them to just totally walk away from it. They love what they do. That would be like if I was a coach and I decided to not coach anymore. Like, how do you walk away? What am I supposed to do? And it was the same thing that I thought when I wasn't streaming all the games on this podcast. When we first started, and I used to watch games on my own still. And then I just kind of got to this point where I was like, this doesn't make sense. I'm watching the game anyway. Why wouldn't I be streaming it? So, I mean, when you really love what you're doing that much, is it really work? I mean, in a way, I think they almost need it. It's not even like it's not about the money. It's clearly not about that. It's just I need to stay involved in coaching, and I need my name to stay relevant. You know how fast people move off of you if you go disappear and into your log cabin? I mean, like, you want to keep that relevancy. You want to keep your name showing up. You want to do all that stuff. And how long did Sean Payton get held down at FS1? 1 year. It was 1 year, and he was taking the Broncos head coaching job the following year. This is all this is, in my opinion. I agree with you. 2025, he's going to be a hired coach on probably one of these vacancies. Maybe it's going to be Mike McCarthy, who gets fired from the Dallas Cowboys if he doesn't win a playoff game. Belichick shows up at a place like that. There's a lot of potential scenarios, but that's the place that I think I'm leaning that way, because I don't know if Belichick would go to a Panthers. I don't know if he would go to a team like that. Sean Payton wanted to go to a team that had a rich history. The Steelers, the Broncos, a team that is relevant. I would imagine Belichick would want to do the same. But it's interesting because the Patriots and the Saints were both not relevant until those two coaches showed up.
That's true. That's true.
I don't know if they would. I don't know, though, at this age, if they want to repeat the process. They might not feel like they have the energy for it. I'm not sure. But what I do know is that Belichick is likely going to get back into coaching. And this is just kind of a 1 year buffer period. Hey, let's just take it easy. Sean was just talking about this. I posted it on a short on my Kyle Kitzman channel, where he said, they asked him if it was hard to disconnect from football. And he said, well, because they're taking, the 4th of July, they take a couple weeks off, and then minicamp starts up. And we're going to talk about minicamp today. But he said, in a way, it's kind of like getting on an aircraft carrier. July 26th or whatever it is, you're getting on that aircraft carrier, and for the next 6 months, you're not getting off. And that's what the season. That's what the season's like. It doesn't stop. There's no vacations. There's no family time. None of that stuff. So I understand what he's saying a little bit. So I think Belichick having that year where you don't got to get on that aircraft carrier for 1 year is what he needs to revitalize his energy. And I think he's going to get that itch again towards the end of the season. And he's also going to have maybe more energy that he's had in the last 10 years by the time this season comes to an end, and he'll be ready to go pick up whatever franchise hires him.
That's true. I mean, something like this, because you're still involved in it, right? And even us, because I've had moments like this during this offseason, and this offseason especially, it's probably because this is one of the first off seasons that I'm no longer in the military. So that's probably why. But during this offseason, when we talk about football and I see the intro and I see us like watching the games, it just gets me really, really hyped for the season because football is fucking awesome, man. And it's so awesome to just watch the games and to experience it with you, with guys like Bill, Nash, Lil E, everybody who stops in, Liam, right? Like it is awesome to experience something like that with everyone all at once, something much bigger than you as an individual. You get to experience with a ton of individuals, right? So that's really cool. And I totally agree with that. He's doing all this media stuff. He's also going on the Manning cast. And I think Bill mentioned it earlier. He goes on Pat McAfee weekly. Like Aaron Rodgers used to, right?
During the draft, he was just real quick during the draft. When Sean Payton drafted Bo Nix, Belichick was on the Pat McAfee draft special, I think they called it.
Yep.
So Pat McAfee was doing the draft with his buddy that was dressed up as Mel Kiper. And
oh yeah.
Yeah. And Belichick interviewed Sean Payton. It was awesome. I mean, it was awesome. And it was like, it's so cool because in a way, and I'll just say this and I'll throw it back to you, but in a way, whenever you have a personality that's so like just nothing like Belichick, right? Just there's like absolutely nothing going on there. He's just, you know? Well, it's kind of like when I grew up with a dad that was kind of an asshole. So anytime you are dealing with an asshole, whenever they're not being an asshole, they get way too much credit for not being an asshole because it's like,
that's so true.
It's like, what is this other side of him? This is so interesting. We have never seen this side of you. And now it's like Belichick doesn't have to do all that much for people to be totally enamored by his crazy personality. Oh, he was actually just putting on a front those 20 years. He's actually got some personality in there. People are going to be having such a great time. And Belichick's not going to have to do that much at all.
That guy was like for 20 plus years, that guy was laser fucking focused, right? Like just with that attitude. It's so funny, but I agree because I was going to say the same thing when you were mentioning or talking about how Sean Payton took basically a year off and then got a coaching job. Like this is Bill Belichick doing this to kind of keep him, like you said, relevant, like in the spaces, even though, let's be honest, Bill Belichick, no matter what, during an offseason is going to be relevant in a coaching search or even during the middle of the season, right? But he keeps his name out there. He keeps his voice out there. He is constantly watching, studying the games, especially during primetime and on some of the biggest shows. Manning cast on Monday Night Football, and then again with Pat McAfee. So again, I think like you and I are agreeing to this. Like this is just something to make sure everybody still knows that he's still got it because come, coach hiring season, he's going to be at the very top of all those names, followed by, Ben Johnson. Oh yeah, you're right. And the Titans ex-coach,
Mike Vrabel. Yeah.
Mike Vrabel as well. So,
and Denver made a sneaky move I think it was like 3 weeks ago. They drafted somebody that was a candidate to be the head coach at Wisconsin. There's a couple coaches on Denver's staff right now that could be head coach candidates, and they asked Sean about that the other day. So it really depends on how the team does, but I think Evero too, the Panthers defensive coordinator, I think he is going to get a head coach nod pretty soon. I think he's going to do well with it. So it's always interesting to see the next wave kind of come through, but mixed bag because you're going to have some of the old reliable too, but yeah, man, he's going to settle back into what he knows best, talking ball with ball players and people that played football. He did have a statement. He said, "I'm thrilled to join my new team at NFL Films to work on such a historical television franchise. I've always appreciated inside the NFL's depth and analysis, and I hope to bring the same detailed insight to the CW by talking real football with real pros, Ryan, Chris, and Chad, this coming season." Belichick's inclusion instantly elevates the quality of Inside the NFL, a show that was already revered for its unique insight. And I also, if I'm not mistaken, I think Kurt Warner is also on, if I might be wrong, but I know Kurt Warner does film breakdown at the quarterback position. I thought that he was doing it on Inside the NFL. I could be wrong though.
Oh,
but regardless, man, there is a ton of, this is like if you're a nerd and you want to get into the nitty gritty of football, which Belichick does, this is the right place for him to be. So congratulations to Bill Belichick. I don't know if it's going to last, more than a year.
More than a year, yeah.
We'll definitely as fans really enjoy seeing a different side of Belichick that we haven't seen before. The Tennessee, go ahead.
Real quick. Bill's saying, I never watched it. Do you guys think it's worth watching?
Are you referring to inside the NFL?
Inside the NFL, or which part, Bill? Because I don't think I've ever really watched Inside the NFL. Ryan Clark is also on ESPN, though.
Yeah, right? I think it is worth watching. So I love watching it because sometimes you feel a certain way and you don't know like what exactly. It's like an itch you can't scratch. And then you put on Inside the NFL and they're just able to like, oh, that's our big problem. That's the problem that we can't solve. Oh, this is what the quarterback does extremely well. And you can take that information and it just helps you, because it's like, let's say they, find out that, look, your biggest problem is that your linebackers don't have enough speed to cover, running backs that run a flat. And then the draft comes around and, you need a linebacker, but now you're looking at their 40 speed because you know that they need to, they need to get a guy that's fast enough. Like, you just get a little more insight and that helps you kind of just get a better understanding of what's going on. But if you're not one of those people that really care about, that stuff, like they're going to be like, this is a cover 2. You got the X backer coming up the left side. Like, if that's not your thing, you're not going to like it. But I will say that although the terminology can sometimes be a little intimidating, they do have a way of making it easy to understand because they're drawing all over, and that really helps because they're not just saying it, but they're showing you.
I was going to say, and that's one of the other things I really like, because look, let's be honest, sometimes during the offseason, especially like the July time period, maybe like late June-ish, it gets pretty dry, but it's awesome to be able to just turn something like that on and learn about, I don't know, how this team had a, top half offensive line and what this means when you bring in this person or this person's going to improve. It is kind of cool to just see that stuff and be like, oh yeah. And just like when we talked about the AFC South, like, oh shit, this is actually a much more interesting division than a lot of people are, in my opinion, are expecting it to be. So you're right. Inside the NFL, worth it. I'm more of like an ESPN. I like seeing like the round table. I haven't really seen too much of the Inside the NFL, but very, very helpful for sure.
Okay, so we're going to pivot here, and it's going to be a pretty good transition because we talked on Tuesday about the AFC South. We did a deep dive, and I thought that it was very thorough, and I left there feeling higher on the Titans than I did coming into that game.
Yeah,
and
that's fair.
We're also going to talk about the 5 biggest camp storylines for each AFC South team today. So we talked about the AFC South. Now we're going to talk about the 5 biggest camp storylines for the AFC South. But before we do, the Titans made another move where they signed Jamal Adams to a 1-year contract. You guys might remember Jamal Adams from the Seahawks. Jamal Adams finally finds a place to continue his career. It's a 1-year contract, which is largely a prove-it deal for him. The team later confirmed the signing. So Adams' career, at least of late, hasn't had much activity. He appeared in just 10 games combined over the last 2 seasons.
Yeah.
To be honest, he hasn't truly made a meaningful difference since 2021. That season, he finished with 87 tackles, 5 passes defended, 4 tackles for a loss, 2 interceptions in 12 games. As Adams approaches 29 years old, still not 30 years old.
Wow.
I know, right? It became clear that the Seahawks weren't going to make an effort to keep the safety who Seattle once sent multiple first-round picks to the Jets for in 2020. This is how fast things can change in the NFL.
Damn.
I mean, 2020, we were in SIG. Like, that was not that long ago. 2020.
Felt like it does feel though like a decade now. That's why when you said he's not even 30 yet, I was like, what?
It's insane, dude. It's absolutely insane. So in 2020, Seattle made a blockbuster trade. They sent multiple first-round picks to the Jets, and instead Adams was left to find employment somewhere else. He didn't pan out. And now, after a prolonged free agency that started in March, Adams finds a home right here where I am in Nashville. And this is just another move that the Titans are doing. And I really think this is a sneaky move, because not only are you bringing in players to your team, but you happen to be bringing in a specific identity of players that have a lot to prove. Calvin Ridley has a lot to prove. Tony Pollard has a lot to prove. Jamal Adams, a lot to prove. These guys all come in and they're at a fork in the road with their career, and they need to go out there and ball out. And then you mix that with proven guys like L'Jarius Sneed and who are even their wide receiver that they drafted, Treylon Burks, to replace Treylon Burks. Like, he has a lot to prove. So you have a lot of guys that really are at a fork in the road. I think you're going to get that competitive nature in practice. And I think that, iron sharpens iron. I think everybody is going to benefit from this identity that Tennessee seems to be going at. But what do you think about Adams in, 29 years old? Shocking. But is there a way that he can bounce back, or is he too far gone? It's a 1-year deal, but do you like it?
Man, it's tough to tell, because the last 4 seasons, he hasn't even played a full season. Like, his first 2 years, 17 and 18, he was, playing the entire season. His second year was Pro Bowl, third year Pro Bowl, first year with Seattle in 2020, Pro Bowl, and then all pros in those his years 2 through 4. But then after that, I mean, he had a good season in 21, but he's been pretty much on the decline ever since. Like, it just has not gotten any better. Last season was a bit better than obviously his 2022 season, when he only played 1 game. He played 9, but still those injuries, and it's hard to get rid of that like injury prone stigma from you unless you come back to a season and you play all the games, you look like your older self. And now, like you said, it's like a prove it. Like, I am a veteran of this league. I was a 3-time All-Pro, 3-time Pro Bowler. I can still do this before the age of 30. Do I think it's going to happen? I don't know. But really, this is an improvement to their safeties for the Titans, because just like we were talking about the other day, I was like, the best part of this defense on the Tennessee Titans is their cornerbacks. And that was it. So this addition of Jamal Adams, the veteran leadership, going to be there. Whether the production is going to be there or not, I have a hard time thinking that, unless he just, comes back in a ridiculous, monstrous way. But I think he's going to have a tough time.
Yeah, and if you missed our episode on Tuesday, definitely check that out, because Adams fits into a Tennessee defense here that's surprisingly fascinating, at least on paper. There's established people like Jeffrey Simmons and L'Jarius Sneed, but there's also other players like Chidobe Awuzie, Kenneth Murray, Arden Key. They bring in massive Texas defensive tackle T'Vondre Sweat. And all of a sudden you look at this team and it feels a little bit like Tennessee's really got something here. And I think that they're not getting the credit that they deserve for the type of off season that they had, but I think that works out in their favor because there's no expectations. I think that this is just going to be a surprising year for us. If you're not expecting Tennessee to win more than 6-7 games, I think maybe you need to reevaluate that. And we talk about how storylines come and they go, and some teams get a lot of hype, some people don't. Well, let's talk about the 5 biggest camp storylines of the AFC South, starting off with the Colts. And the players are going to report July 24th to the Colts. The location's Grand Park, Westfield, Indiana. That's just some fan information for Jinja. What you got against Indiana?
I don't know. It's stinky there.
Notable roster. No, I actually went to the draft, and I got to say, I was not expecting it. It's a college town. It's a bunch of college kids. Indianapolis. Yeah, it was a lot of fun, man. There was a lot of youth and the energy and bars and restaurants. I was not expecting it to be so fun.
Kyle went there and he's like, I remember these days.
Yeah. I was sitting in the corner playing $20 worth of pool, just watching all the college people, and they were it was a good time.
You miss it.
Yeah, it's funny how we're on this side of history already.
Oh, I know, dude. It's crazy.
So
I'm 22. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Notable roster changes: Latu, Adoni Mitchell, Matt Goncabs, Tanner Bordeloni. I love those first 4 picks. And then, a couple 5th and 6th, 7th rounders. They also added Joe Flacco, which is sneaky. It's sneaky because if Lutz doesn't work, or Will Levis doesn't work out, Joe Flacco is there. He is an option.
The Colts.
Or I'm sorry,
Richardson.
Richardson, yeah.
Yeah.
If Richardson doesn't stay healthy, you got Joe Flacco there. And Joe Flacco, knock on wood, wherever you can find it. But I think even if Anthony Richardson stays healthy, having a guy like Joe Flacco in the room is a huge asset. So their preseason schedule, they play the Broncos, their first preseason game, August 11th. Then they play the Cardinals August 17th and the Bengals August 22nd. So some schedule notes. The Colts are tied for the 21st hardest strength of schedule in 2024. Ooh. Not bad, 21. Indianapolis is one of 5 teams that opens the season with 3 of its first 4 games at home. Very favorable for the Colts. Indy also opens the season with 3 of its first 4 games against 2023 playoff teams. Okay, the teeter-totter has come back down. But
Kyle's like, hold up, pause.
I'm like, oh, this is good. Oh, okay, we'll see. The Colts are one of 6 teams with the latest possible bye, which is week 14, all according to NFL research. So what you need to know when camp starts, all eyes are going to be on Anthony Richardson's right arm. The 22-year-old quarterback's coming back from surgery for an AC joint sprain on his throwing shoulder and not at all looking to change his style of play. The good news is that general manager Chris Ballard said that Richardson will be a full go for camp. So we're talking already about the main headline for the Colts. It's going to be Anthony Richardson. It's going to be what he is. I mean, he flashed brilliance under center, only 4 games. But still, he had 4 rushing touchdowns. He had 3 passing touchdowns, only 1 interception, but he left multiple games with injuries before the one that actually ended his campaign. So Anthony Richardson, his health, like I still think Anthony Richardson could work out in a very big way for the Colts, in a way where it's like, oh, he's going to be a superstar in the league. I still think that potential is there.
Dude, and the fact that he just turned 22 in May. He just turned 22. Like, in NFL years, this is extremely young, and what he was able to show in those few games for the Colts is just, as a Colts fan, you're like, please, God, let this be a makeup for Andrew Luck retiring just like on a dime like that, right? So they're really hoping for it. And I'm feeling the same way you are about Anthony Richardson, and hopefully Adonai Mitchell as well, right? So hopefully that can work out. Again, we talked about Pittman on Tuesday and him being the number 1 wide receiver, but yeah, you're absolutely correct. All eyes are going to be on Anthony Richardson, not only when the start of camp comes, but also the first week of the season. And Colts fans and really everyone and all fans of the AFC South are going to like try to size him up. Him and Will Levis. They're going to be like, all right, what are these guys made of? Is week 1 going to be like a fluke, or what's going to happen? Is that the beginning of like a great season for them? How's that going to go? So I'm right there with you.
Yeah, and speaking of Michael Pittman Jr., that's the number 2 storyline for the Colts. There's Michael Pittman Jr. and there's everyone else. The 5th-year wideout has led the Colts in receiving yards and touchdowns and catches for 3 years in a row now. The thing is Indy needs to establish another receiving threat, and we're not sure who it's going to be. Josh Downs is coming off a promising 68-catch, 771-yard rookie season, and he figures to be the man in the slot as the second target. They did draft Adonai Mitchell, who has the skill set to match or eventually surpass Downs despite the draft slide at 52. And then you have Alec Pierce, who was a 2022 second rounder. And you look at the Colts draft moves in the past 3 seasons, and it seems like they've been slowly just bringing in assets. Josh Downs, Adonai Mitchell, Alec Pierce. And it does seem like they're getting value out of these players, and they're all still kind of becoming what they're going to be. And so is Anthony Richardson. And it's just really fascinating to see, what if this offense just really gets going? What if Anthony Richardson pans out? But who's going to be that number 2 receiver? Is Josh Downs going to take it, or is it going to go to Adonai Mitchell? Are you leaning any way on that wide receiver 2 spot?
I really have a lot of faith in Adonai Mitchell. Josh Downs, I know him because I picked him up last year in my fantasy squad, so he was doing okay. Kyle hates it. I had to drop him. He wasn't doing that well. He had like maybe 2 good games. So
cheater.
That's how this is how I get to know like lesser known offensive players, because I'm like, oh yeah, I picked that guy up and he had like a good game or 2. Same. This is how I'm judging all these players, by the way. I just want everybody to know that. I am leaning fair. More towards, it is fair, absolutely, because you kind of get to know them a little bit more through your fantasy squad.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is, I just want all you guys to know I'm dumb as hell, and that's how I'm doing this. I am going through the fantasy pickups. But yeah, I'm going with Adonai Mitchell here, the rookie. I feel like, and we've talked about this again, pretty much since we started this podcast, the talent level coming in the first 3 rounds of the draft is exceeding all expectations. I mean, we're talking about Puka Nacua and Kyron Williams last season, and they were late round draft picks. So I think I'm going to go Adonai Mitchell here. Again, Josh Downs had an okay season for someone who was, not necessarily wide receiver 2, but had some good games. So, but I think Adonai Mitchell is going to come in and really compete for that wide receiver 2. And whether or not he gets that to start the season, I think eventually he does move into that number 2 spot where he becomes more of a someone that Richardson is passing the ball to as the season goes on. And Bill's saying, didn't Richardson go out early last year? Should have had enough time to heal up. He did. You are correct, Bill. It's just always something that's there lingering, right? Like no matter what, like, hey, with Aaron Rodgers, the same thing. He went out the first 4 plays of the season. He came back super early, but it's still going to be something that they're going to look at. But back to the wide receivers, Adonai Mitchell, wide receiver 2 for me.
All right. So number 3 is pretty fascinating for the Colts. First off, it's not every year that you get to take the first defender on the board at number 15 overall. But that's the way that it worked out for the Colts when they drafted a pretty fascinating player in Latu Latu, a guy that was medically retired by Washington due to a neck injury in 2020. And now he is a star, or supposedly going to be a star in the NFL. He is going to play with a lot of other good players like DeForest Buckner, Samson Ukabam. Indianapolis can afford to rotate Latu and gradually at edge. But I'm excited to see, A, what is he going to look like right off the bat? And B, what size of a role is he going to play in the defense immediately? Is he going to be on a pitch count? I mean, the noteworthy concern here is his injury history. So if you're a Colts fan, you're kind of just monitoring this whole thing to trying to figure out, okay, what's fair expectations for Latu Latu? He was the first defensive player off the board. And normally the first defensive player off the board, you're not sitting there thinking about injury history, but that just kind of tells you the massive upside this player has for the fact that he overcame all of those, valid concerns and still became the number 1 defensive player selected. So I think the Colts are just like, okay, if you're able to still go number 1 in the defense with all that, this guy must have massive upside. So what is he going to look like right away? What are you expecting out of Latu Latu? Is this a situation where he comes in right away, defensive rookie of the year type of a season? Or do you think that they're going to try to be a little more cautious with him and see maybe year 2, year 3 is when he makes that big jump? Kind of like how Trayvon Walker for the Jags is expected to make that jump this year.
Yeah, I am expecting more of a year 2, year 3, like, okay, Latu has arrived type of thing. It gets weird with like defensive players because you've seen Will Anderson Jr. for last season, for example, and oh man, what is his name? The Eagles took him, defensive tackle. Jalen Carter. You saw those guys come in and immediately be game wreckers and game disruptors, right? But there's been seasons where defensive players, defensive linemen, right, don't do anything the first 2-3 seasons. And it really does take like a toll on that team, because if you take them that high, you're expecting almost immediate impact. And sometimes that doesn't happen. So by year 4, it's kind of like a weird thing that you're dealing with. Should we re-sign him? Should we pick up the option? Blah, 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 right? I do think Laiatu Latu is going to be one of those guys that not necessarily struggles his rookie year, but doesn't have a Will Anderson type of year, his rookie year. I think he is a year 2, year 3 type of guy where year 2, year 3, Colts fans are going to be like, yes, this is who we drafted, 15 overall, number 1 defensive player off the board. That's what I'm thinking for Laiatu Latu, but I still think down the road, he's going to have a good career. And again, you paired him up with DeForest Buckner and Ubakam, whatever his name is. And you've got some really good veterans there to kind of teach you along the way, similar to Jalen Carter on the Eagles.
The other position that is still up in the air is free safety, and many of the same pieces on the roster are returning. The Colts spent in free agency, but mostly they spent to retain their own. Now, that's especially true in the secondary, but local reporters have indicated that Nick Cross, who started the team's final 2 games last season, took the majority of the first team snaps at free safety during minicamp, while Rodney Thomas held the top free safety role during Indy's first 15 games last year and will be working to reassume that position. A similar battle is shaping up at the cornerback spot opposite of Juju Brents with Dallas Flowers and 2023 7th rounder Jalen Jones. So those are 2 names to watch. So these are 2 positions, cornerback and free safety, where there is a kind of a battle going on. A 7th rounder, that guy's going to have a chip on his shoulder. Flowers is coming off an Achilles tear, suffered 4 weeks into his first campaign as a starter, while Jones got the nod in 10 games in the aftermath of that injury. So you do have, who's it going to be? Who's it going to be? Is it going to be Flowers? Is it going to be Jalen Jones? Is it going to be Nick Cross or Juju Brents? And it's exciting because this Colts team really does feel like it could make a playoff push this year. But that cornerback 2 position is really, really important. So you do have battles at free safety and corner. Just something to look out for to wrap up the Colts.
Yeah, fuck it. Throw in Nick Cross. He did pretty good in those 2 games that he started. I mean, he still played 17 games. And, his stats aren't bad. 39 combined tackles, 24 solo, 15 that came in assisted. You want a free safety? Let's think about this. A last line of your defense to be able to make those open field tackles. That is one thing that I have complained about safeties pretty much the last couple seasons, especially when the Bears and Eddie Jackson and that whole mess. So your last line of defense needs to be able to make those open tackles. And with 24 solo tackles with Nick Cross and an interception to go with that, couple games started, 17 games played total. Yeah, sure. Why not? Let's throw him in there. See what he got. Year 3 loading.
Yeah, and Nick Cross, he played those 2 games at the end of the season, but he finished with a 71.8 PFF grade.
There you go.
Which is a good grade, and that would explain why he is being looked at as potentially taking over that starting job. The Jaguars are our second team on the lineup. Their training camp starts July 19th. That's my brother's birthday. The location is going to be Miller Electric Center in Jacksonville, Florida. And notable roster changes: Brian Thomas Jr., Mason Smith, Jerrion Jones, Javon Foster. Jerrion Jones is going to be a solid corner, I think. They also bring in Matt Jones, Gabe Davis, Devin Duvernay, Mitch Morse, Eric Armstead, Ronald Darby, Trey Flowers, Darnell Savage, Terrell Edmonds. They actually made a lot of changes. This is a totally different team than they put on the field last year. They're going to play their first preseason game at home against the Kansas City Chiefs August 10th, then the Tampa Bay Bucks, then the Atlanta Falcons. The Jags are tied for the 8th hardest strength of schedule this year. They opened the season with 4 straight games against playoff teams, and 3 of those are on the road. The Jags will play back-to-back games in London for a second year in a row. What you need to know: although they didn't complete a blockbuster trade like the Texans did for Stephon Diggs or the Titans for Snead, the Jaguars do top the NFL in free agency money spent and re-signing players. Per over the cap, just above Tennessee, the only other team that's eclipsed the $300 million mark. So, I mean, I was just going through all those names, and it felt like that, didn't it? It was like, wow, that's a lot of players, a totally new team. So how will all the new pieces gel? This is a really simple headliner. For number one, you got a lot of new pieces on the team. How's it going to look? How are they going to gel? What's the chemistry going to be between all the players? Can the Jags keep up in the division with a division that's getting better? And can paying a pretty penny for a roster make an immediate difference? It's the same question we're asking about the Tennessee Titans.
That is the most important question that people should be asking themselves: is how is all of these signings, again, the Jags spend a shit ton of money this offseason, how are all of them going to gel year one? And this is one of the reasons that free agency is such a huge event during the offseason, because as a fan, you're like, yes, we got this guy. Yes, we got that guy. As a Jags fan, you're probably like, oh my God, we brought in an amazing amount of people. It's just now, how are they going to gel when training camp starts during preseason? Because bringing in one guy through free agency or through a trade, I'm gonna make it about the Bears right now. Montez Sweat made an immediate impact on that defensive line and the defense in general. The Bears were so much better when Montez Sweat came in. When you're bringing in several guys who are filling several positions, that's when it starts to get a little bit like teeter-tottery. It's like, uh-oh, are these guys actually going to gel over training camp, over the offseason, through preseason games? So that can be a little bit scary. It is way, way different when you bring in like one guy who is just a solid addition to your team. So that's the question for me. I don't know if the Jaguars should have super high expectations, to start the season, because even again, making this about the Bears, even with the Bears and like linebackers and a bunch of guys they brought in, the season wasn't great. It was not great to start off the year, not until the latter half of the year. And even, further down than that, then it started to get a little bit better. You play a few more games, you start to get comfortable with each other, how this person plays, how that person plays. Now now the ball's starting to roll a little bit. So the beginning of the season, let's just, temper expectations, Jags fans.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because if you bring in one guy, you still have 10 players that have played together and they know each other.
Yeah.
I mean, if you bring in 5 guys that haven't played together, it's not just those 5 guys that haven't played together. It's the 5 guys that are returning also haven't played with the 5 guys. And that makes it, the whole entire defense doesn't know each other. I mean, it's crazy, because one guy may react to a different guy different than, another guy that was on the team last year reacts to a guy. So it's just going to be interesting. And I'll do 2 and 1 right here. Trevor Lawrence, the big extension, all eyes are going to be on Trevor Lawrence. And if he can get back to proving that 2023 was a blip rather than the new normal, they paid him like it's not going to be the new normal. And one of the things that was a bright spot on the Jacksonville Jaguars last year was Travis Etienne, who who had 325 touches, which was the third most in the NFL, and he led the NFL in touchdowns. Now, this offseason, the coach has again underscored the importance of getting Etienne more rest. The question is, who's going to step up so that he can actually afford such a luxury when the games begin? Because Jacksonville opted not to add a new running back in free agency, and they waited until the 5th round to select Keelan Robinson. Dearness Johnson is established by now as solid depth rather than a true difference maker. Tanks Bigsby, 2.6 yards per attempt and negative 0.7 rushing yards over expected per carry, ranked dead last and was tied for the 6th worst, respectively, among running backs with at least 50 carries. If not one, perhaps all three together can prove enough to take some pressure off. But you're definitely looking for who's going to be the RB2. There's a reason Travis Etienne didn't get any rest last season. I don't know if they have addressed it, but I think the hope is that Keelan Robinson is going to be the guy. And before you say he's a 5th round draft pick, I'm pretty sure that the running back for the Rams last year, that Kyron Williams, I'm pretty sure he was a 5th round pick as well, if not later. So you can get a running back in the 5th round. It's one of the reasons that people don't pay for running backs, to be quite honest. But this is the storyline here. Who's going to be the RB2? You need a 1-2 punch. Who's the second punch coming from?
Yeah, and with Tank Bigsby, he was a 3rd rounder in 2023. All right. He was a rookie coming into this season, so he's still got a lot of potential, but they brought in Dearness, God damn it, what's his last name? Dearness Johnson as that backup. Yes, he wasn't great, but we have to look at the Jaguars running game as a whole. It was not great. Travis Etienne was basically doing everything, and that included catching passes. So he was all over the field, but the running game for the Jags as a whole was not amazing last season. To touch on Trevor Lawrence, right? Like, you are hoping as a Jags fan that last year was a speed bump. And clearly, again, we have talked about this on and on and on, and he was injured. It's just facts that he was injured and he was trying to play through it. Just like Joe Burrow was last season, which eventually led him to missing time, and the Bengals, missed out on the playoffs because of it. When he did get paid, I was one of those guys where I was like, oh God, you can't pay this guy lower. And one of those reasons too is like, when you kind of think about it, you're like, the guys who are paying him are the ones who are seeing him come to the facility every day, are the ones who see him and his play on the field, see his drive, see his training, see how much he loves the game, see this,
the guys
see
at
that.
Waffle House.
The guys at Waffle House, he's always going to Waffle House, which, by the way, I miss Waffle House so much. Anyway, regardless,
it's here. I can go.
I gotta get back to the South. Anyway, so we have to take that into consideration. Is like, these guys know that last season, or at least they're hoping that last season was a complete just fluke of a season. That's not going to be Trevor Lawrence for the rest of his career. That's why they paid them the big bucks. It is just going to be one of those things that Jags fans and really the entire NFL are going to look at and be like, okay, what happens when you get hurt again? Are you going to try to play through it, or are you going to miss some time to hopefully get your team still into the playoffs later into the season? Because I think last season was also maybe somewhat of a good lesson for Trevor Lawrence to be like, all right, if I'm hurt, I'm hurt. If I miss one game and I feel better after missing that game instead of trying to play through it, then that is just better for the team in general. He's already paid, so he doesn't have to worry about that. He has to go out there and win these games, and that's what Jags fans want. They just want Trevor Lawrence at 100% and being Trevor Lawrence of 2022. That's what they need, and that's what they want.
Yeah, and one of the reasons that I do think that the Jaguars could be in an AFC Championship game is because Trevor Lawrence, and also you look at their weaknesses, defense, and the fact that they couldn't run the football. We just talked about, he had a great year talking about Travis Etienne. But besides him, people were having a lot of trouble. And it wasn't just Tank Bigsby that found running room hard to come by last year. ETN too met opposition frequently before having a chance to make a play. So Jacksonville appears confident that stability and chemistry at the offensive line is going to rectify those issues. They did sign Morse to take over at center, but you look at the other 4 starting jobs on the offensive line, and they feel destined for returning players. Cam Robinson, Ezra Cleveland, Brandon Scherf, and Anton Harrison are all returning. So you're going to have some continuity there. Robinson and Sheriff are on contract years. So you're hoping that you can get a boost from them playing on a contract year. And Cleveland is just trying to live up to the extension that he signed in March. And will Harrison rebound from a rocky rookie season? Most importantly, can that familiarity result in improvement? But the offensive line, man, this is a huge reason that running the ball was hard. It's a huge reason that the Jags weren't better, and it's another reason why Trevor Lawrence ended up hurt. The offensive line is something that it's kind of like, as the offensive line goes, so does your team. And this is, ranked at 4. I would probably put this at 1. I know who Trevor Lawrence is. This offensive line needs to get their shit together.
Yeah, and that's and again another reason why they brought in Mitch Morse too, the center. Again, we're talking about the offensive line, basically the foundation of really everything that has to do with a football team. We talk about the quarterback touching the ball every single play and being the most important. The center also touches the ball every single play, and he's part of a unit that has to protect not only the quarterback, but has to be able to move the ball on the ground. So the struggles on the ground, bringing in all these guys again with Mitch Morse, with a lot of their starters. I believe it was 4 starters out of 5. 4 players that started at that spot. Yeah. So bringing all those again, that familiarity that you were talking about, will it produce results? You bring in Mitch Morse at center. Will this all work? And will the running game get better? That's just the big thing with the offensive line here.
So you get the offensive line figured out. You're hoping that it's figured out. Trevor Lawrence has a better year. Let's say they get a boost with the guy that they drafted. The other glaring weakness is defense. And now Ryan Nielsen is taking over, serving a new team at defensive coordinator for a 3rd straight year. But here's the thing. It's not because of a lack of results that he's bounced around the league. It's quite the opposite. So in 2022, the Saints finished in the top 10 in scoring and top 5 in yards. And in 2023, he elevated a previous bottom tier Falcons defense to its best rankings in both of those categories in just, can you believe this, 6 years since they had those kind of results. Wow. And now it's time to turn around the mediocre Jags unit. So you look at, okay, what did he do well for the Saints? What did he do well for the Falcons? I'll say it again. Top 10 in scoring, in top 5 in yards. Yep. So this is a really good thing if you're a pass rusher or an edge rusher. Josh Allen will be key to the pass rush. Trayvon Walker is supposed to be ascending this year. And what he does best is he's creative. He's creative in the ways that he gets after the quarterback. He's going to be able to maximize those 2 guys, and also Eric Armstead as well. So I think one thing you do know is that Ryan Nielsen is going to find a way to get these guys to wreck havoc in the opponent's offense. So if these guys get going, let's say Trayvon Walker turns into a bona fide star, you already know Josh Allen is going to be getting after him. Eric Armstead. This is what I think, though. If Trayvon Walker was already on a trajectory to make the jump and Josh Allen's already a bona fide star, what does that mean they're going to be this year with a guy that's coming in that specializes in getting these guys to get after the quarterback? You're getting a guy that specifically does this. So I think a lot of people are going to be looking at Jacksonville's defense. Always, if you get a new defensive coordinator, you're watching the defense. But specifically, how good this pass rushing duo can be between Walker and Josh Allen. That's really what you're looking at here.
Yeah, and one of the few things from his press conference, he said, we're going to be kind of the overview of everything is we want to be attacking and aggressive. And like you said, he was talking about Trayvon Walker. He's mentioning here's kind of our philosophy with the players is we're going to put the players in a position that he can have success first over the scheme. We're going to evaluate everything he does well. And then if he can rush inside, then we'll put him inside. So he's already got a plan for these guys already at the opening press conference. He's also talked about Coach Peterson and, doing his research and talking to other people in the league because he has been in the NFL for quite a while. And those things that make an impression on him drew him to the Jags. And like you talked about, his resume already kind of speaks for itself. So again, if you've got a guy who at his press conference has already got a plan for the Trayvon Walkers, the Josh Hines Allens, then I think you've got a really, really good outlook on your defense.
Yeah, totally agree with that. I'm super excited to get into the Houston Texans, which is our next team, because I think the Houston Texans are going to the Super Bowl this year. It's my Super Bowl team that I picked, and last year, I think they shocked a lot of people. They matched their combined win total from the previous 3 seasons with 11.
That's insane.
With a first-year quarterback, a first-year head coach.
It's and a bit of turnover, like on the offense too.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the Texans aren't going to sneak up on anybody this year like they did last year. Everybody knows that the Texans are that team. CJ Stroud's the offensive rookie of the year. Will Anderson, we get it. But can the Houston Texans do what is necessary to stay on top? Okay, this is the first year since 2020 that the Texans entered the season as the hunted and not the huntee. So are the Texans going to be able to handle this pressure? How will they handle the pressure? Is the team going to play as good? Is there a sophomore slump in the horizon? This is the first storyline for the Houston Texans. It's just a matter of, can they capitalize on what they did last year without living off of what they did last year? It's a what have you done for me lately league. Is there a sophomore slump? What do you think about that?
I'm going to go back to what we talked about a few weeks ago too. I think the Texans offensively, man, even with Stephon Diggs, I don't know. I still think offensively they take a step back, maybe more so CJ Stroud. I'm not expecting a full just decline, a full fucking just head first dive into, just nothing. But I am expecting some sort of decline, right? Because it is tough to, do what you did last year. We've seen that time and time again. This defense for this team did so well. They are taking the ball away. They're getting sacked. It's so hard to replicate that the next season again, because you were playing at the hardest level. And this is just based off me thinking that is what's going to happen. This has nothing to do with them losing people off their on their offensive side. I think although Singletary was the only, loss at running back that the Texans had. But again, this is just like, it's going to be tough to keep it up again. On the offensive side, that's kind of what I'm thinking. On the defensive side, they might get better with Danielle Hunter there. Again, Will Anderson Jr., defensive rookie of the year, right? So I think all those guys will complement each other. It's just, it becomes I don't know, maybe this is just me thinking a little too much of it, but I think the defense is a little bit easier to control in terms of maybe sort of staying at somewhat a level, especially when you bring in a guy like Daniel Hunter into the mix, right? Like I was talking about Montez Sweat, his presence alone made the Bears defense immediately so much better. So it's going to be interesting to see if the defense with Azeez Al-Shaair and the addition of Daniel Hunter and Will Anderson through the draft last year, obviously, is going to continue to elevate that defense. Can they be better? Possibly, right? we still talked about it on Tuesday. I've still got them winning the AFC South. So I don't think the sophomore slump is going to be that bad where they're not winning the division. It's similar to what the Bills did a few years ago once Josh Allen got Stephon Diggs and the Bills just started to be they're making the playoffs type of team year in, year out. It's just going to be, can they make it past the divisional round now into the conference championship, into the Super Bowl? That's kind of where I've got them at. They're going to be a playoff team for the near future every season, I think.
I would say the distant future. I also, you just covered everything, so we can move on to. I'm just kidding. No, you did.
Let's go.
You did cover a couple things. You talked about Singletary's departure. Joe Mixon comes in. He's long proven capable of carrying the workload. But his recent output is more of a byproduct of opportunity than efficiency. He hasn't logged 1,000 yards rushing, or he didn't last season. And the question is, what kind of Joe Mixon are you going to get coming in? Dameon Pierce will also have a say in the kind of workload that he's going to have. So Joe Mixon, the running back, I'll just make this one quick, but how do you think Joe Mixon is going to pan out for the Houston Texans this year?
Look, last year, Devin Singletary was a somebody, and that was after a few years with the Bills, and the Bills struggled with running backs up until Zach Moss, or I'm sorry, not Zach Moss, Cook last season. I don't know what that means. Is Cook just that much better of a running back than Devin Singletary? Because last year they both had really good seasons. So I think with Joe Mixon coming into this year, I think he's going to improve, and I think he is going to elevate that running game again with Dameon Pierce next to him. We still have to remember Joe Mixon, for as bad of a season he had last season, he still rushed for over 1,000 yards, had 9 touchdowns, receiving over 370 yards, 52 receptions, and 3 touchdowns. So he's still got a lot in the tank here.
Yeah, dude, he was 8th in rushing yards last year. I said he didn't get 1,000. I meant to say he barely got 1,000, but yeah, he was 8th in rushing yards, 5th in carries, 9th in rushing touchdowns. He's a top 10 running back in the league.
Yeah, absolutely. And it felt like during some games, it's just like he wasn't doing anything. And again, I had him on my roster, so I know. So I know that there were some times where it was like tough, really, really tough to kind of have him there, or even like stick up for him as being a good running back. And Bill's saying, say nice things about Singletary again for me, Rick. Yeah, no, again, Singletary was rough to begin the season, to begin his career, with the Bills, but he got to the Texans and it seemed like either he figured it out or the Texans were just able to introduce something better for him, better options, a better line, a better scheme, something. So hopefully he does well for the Giants, Bill. But yeah, I think Joe Mixon can rush for like 1,300 yards next season and maybe get double-digit rushing touchdowns behind that Texans line if they improve.
Yeah, and Dameon Pierce was on pace to break the Houston Texans rookie rushing single season rushing record.
Wow!
Before he got hurt, last year he has 930, his rookie season he had 939 yards before that injury happened. And if Pierce doesn't bounce back in August, it's possible, though, that Mixon will continue receiving the same old workload that we're used to. Another storyline here is the cornerback position. Derek Stingley Jr. is locked in at the number 1 spot after logging 5 picks in 11 games last year. But QB2 is up in the air with Steven Nelson, 16 starts in 2023. He's retired, and Tavari Thomas had only 5 starts last year. He's gone. The cornerback with the next most starts for Houston behind Stingley is Desmond King, who had 3 starts. He could get the first shot at nickel duties. And Kamari Lassiter, the team's first pick in this year's draft at number 42 overall, will be looking to prove himself worthy of taking that job either. I'm telling you right now, I'm going with Kamari Lassiter. You draft a cornerback. It's your first pick of the draft. It's the one thing. What does your first pick tell you? Well, it tells me this. It tells me that you are saying if there's only one damn thing that we're going to do, we're going to do it. The Bears had 3 draft picks, I believe, this year, and they drafted four.
No, four.
And they get Caleb Williams. That was the most important thing to them. Then they
Actually
get
5. Sorry.
5.
Yeah.
But my point is, they didn't have a pick in the first round because they got Will Anderson Jr. So they had to deal with that. So when they went into this draft, they knew that they had one hand tied behind their back. What are you going to do with the picks that you do have? Well, we're going to do the most important thing with the first opportunity that we get on the board, just like the Broncos did with Bo Nix. They were strategic in drafting a corner. It wasn't like, well, whoever's on the board will get the best available. That's not what this is. This was a team that desperately needed a second cornerback. And when they were on the clock, after a long offseason, I'm sure, of studying the cornerbacks that they believe was going to be available when they get on the board, it was Kamari Lassiter who the team's first pick was, and I don't think it was just because the board fell that way. And also, D'Amico Ryans, the defensive head coach, I think that he knew what he was getting. He's probably also doing a lot of game planning, filming, and has a lot to say about who the team drafts. And also, if he wanted him and he drafted him, he's going to start him. So Kamari Lassiter, in my opinion, is going to be the starter for the team, and I think he'll be okay. I liked him in college. I've drafted him in some of my mocks, and I thought when the Texans drafted him right away, I thought he's going to be the starter.
Yeah, second round talent, 2-time national champion. Sorry. So yeah, I don't think it's like unfair to think that, going into training camp and soon into the season, we cannot though skip over what's his name, Jeff Okudah, right? Let me just double check. Jeff Okudah. Jeff Okudah. He was, I believe, a first round talent, if I'm not mistaken.
Because he was. I know he went to Ohio State. I can't remember where he was drafted.
To the Lions, and
okay.
Yeah, he's had like 3 not so great, but not so terrible seasons with the Lions. I don't think that his value was like he was playing up to his value with the Lions. So kind of new scenery, has a pretty good build. God damn it, where is it? I just saw it. Regardless, he has a pretty good build, and I know him pretty well over the last couple seasons because, well, he's in the division. He's in the NFC North. There's been times where he looks like a fucking rock star. It's just that the Lions
it's just because he's playing the Bears.
I fucking hate you. But the Lions we're getting a little bit rich in the cornerback department. So they're like, all right, man, see ya. So I don't want to rule out Jeff Okudah just yet because he does have that veteran status. He's played 2 seasons under Dan Campbell in a more revamped Detroit Lions team.
2.
Yeah, 2. So I don't want to rule him out just yet, but no, absolutely. I'm going with your pick as well with Lassiter. It's tough to draft him second round and not want to start him.
Yeah, especially when you put in all that work into making sure you get your guy. And he only, I was going to say, he only played 9 games in 2020. And for whatever reason, I guess he didn't impress a lot because I don't know if he got hurt or not, so don't quote me there. But in 2021, he only played in 1 game. And then 2022, he played in 15 games. And then all of a sudden, he's with Atlanta playing 13 games. So, yeah, I mean, he's still somebody that could rise to the depth chart, especially when you have a rookie. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm still going with Kamari Lassiter, but watch out for Okudah. Next up, we go to the last team in the AFC South. And real quick, before we do that, is there a storyline with the Houston Texans that maybe is not being discussed here? We talked about the hype. We talked about the running back position. We talked about the corner. Who
was it?
The biggest storyline, in my opinion, for the Texans this camp is how CJ Stroud is going to disperse the football to Tank Dell, Nico Collins, and Stephon. And who is going to actually be the wide receiver one? Because Stephon Diggs seems like the clear, obvious choice, but I just think that Nico Collins is going to have a better season. And if Nico Collins does become a wide receiver one, is Stephon Diggs even capable of being a wide receiver two? I don't know how he's going to handle that. And is Tank Dell too good to be a three? There's a lot of mouths to feed. And I think training camp is when you're going to get your first look at, I mean, dude, can you just imagine training camp? Diggs over here, Nico Collins over there, Tank Dell here. I mean, that's just
scary.
That is literally terrifying. I almost get goosebumps thinking about them lining up all at the same time. This team is absolutely a Super Bowl
shit. Oh,
no, they are. This team is what it looks like when you go to the Pro Bowl and all the receivers line up. That's what this team looks like. But is it going to work out? There is a term, too many cooks in the kitchen, that exists for a valid reason. It does happen. And it does happen with people that happen to be like Diggs. And I love Diggs. I won my first fantasy football trophy because of him. But at the same time,
fuck you.
Just had to throw in that little tidbit. But at the same time, I do have my questions. They're not doubts. They're just valid questions about how this is going to look. I do think CJ Stroud is the type of player to kind of handle all this. But for me, the biggest storyline, in my opinion, is what the new offense is going to look like, because you can't add a piece like Stephon Diggs and think you're just putting a cherry on top. Diggs is so much more than a cherry. He's a whole nother entree of dessert. And I'm interested to see, what is it going to look like?
That the first thing you said, too many cooks in the kitchen. I could not resonate with that more. Because while, I don't watch basketball, pretty recently, actually, because the Bulls suck and whatever, I'm more football focused anyway. But there's one ball. Though there's one ball, there's one football, there's one basketball. When you put too many stars on one team, it's going to get just like you're saying. There's too many cooks in the kitchen. Everybody wants the ball. Everybody wants to make a play. That has been one of the things that Stephon Diggs has been complaining about the last 3 seasons under the with the Bills. You know what I mean? Like, not enough touches, not enough targets. And even when they do go to him, it's like, dude, you just dropped the wide open ball. So that is the one time. But so, I think these are fair questions to have. And I think fair concerns as well, because Nico Collins, when they were on the field together, worked so well. And CJ Stroud was able to get them both the ball. You bring in Stephon Diggs. I think Stephon Diggs is going to come in with a much clearer goal, attitude, whatever, hopefully. But again, it's going to be interesting to see how all of this meshes during the season, because your first year on a team as Stephon Diggs, you do not want to be doing what you were doing the last 2 seasons on the Bills. You don't want to be going up to CJ Stroud and complaining about targets. You don't want to go up to your coach or the other wide receivers and just start making problems, right? That's kind of what a locker room cancer is. So you don't want to start doing that. And especially how you said earlier, like on a team that is going to be in the playoffs and going to be pretty much an elite team in the future and presently. So that's not what you want to be doing, but it is still going to be interesting to watch. I just hope it kind of all works out for them in the wide receiver room, because Tank Dell and Nico Collins, they're young guys. They're what, Nico Collins going to year 3, Tank Dell second season. You want to keep those guys happy if they're going to be producers for you for, the future of the Texans organization.
Yeah, they're in a Super Bowl window right now. And the other thing is that they were I was about to do something funny. Hold on. I just was going to say, I just remembered something that's been kind of underreported as far as the Texans news, is that their stadium does need some repairs after a hurricane ripped through some of the roof panel. Wait. Oh my God, Bill. No way. Dude, are we insane? Oh, I'll finish that thought though. I do think it was genius that the Texans was able to get Nico Collins a 4-year, $80-some million deal, because I'm expecting him to have a top 5 receiving campaign this year. Yesterday I did my top 5 quarterback wide receiver duos. Nico Collins was second on my list.
Nice.
Above guys like Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. So I do think that he's going to really emerge this year. And because of this timing, guess who's about to get a deal? CeeDee Lamb's about to get a deal. Jamar Chase is about to get a deal.
Yep.
You don't want to have him go ball out and then have to pay him Justin Jefferson type of money. So the Texans were smart. They were like, let's just get this done right now. He's going to cost us $20 million a year, but he's not going to cost us $40 a year. It was a really smart move. Both parties win. So I just wanted to add that in there. I just think the timing of that deal was perfect.
Yeah, no, that's a good reason to bring that in, because you said it was how much a year now?
How much money a year? I believe.
Yeah.
I think it was an $80 million contract.
Oh, okay.
Collins deal. 3-year contract that will pay him a maximum of $75 million.
Damn.
I know. Yo, let me hold 20. Let me hold 20.
Let me get a 20 right quick. No, yeah, that was a smart move on the Texans. You're right. Yeah, again, expecting what CeeDee Lamb and Jamar Chase's deals are basically going to reset the market again. It was smart for them to just extend them.
Yeah, and it's so funny because whenever the owners and the GMs and they're like, you know what, we're going to take a chance. We got a good feeling that this guy's going to ball out, and they do that. All of a sudden, next year, Nico Collins are like not showing up at training camp, want to restructure. It's like, wait a minute, we took a chance. Like the deal's got to work for us too, and they're like, no, fuck you. It's like it's just funny. I don't know Nico Collins well enough to know if he's going to do that or not, but wouldn't be shocked if he wants to restructure after he balls out this year.
He's going to join Aaron Rodgers in what was it, in Costa Rica?
No. Oh, are you talking about the ayahuasca?
Or with the ayahuasca trips. He's just going to be trip and trip.
I'm not joking when I say this. As we speak, my dad is in Costa Rica doing ayahuasca.
Let's go!
He was nervous. I talked to him before he went, and I could tell, like, in his voice, like he was just like, I'm just like, he just deals with, a little bit of depression, and he's just like, I got to do something. So he booked the trip, and it's like very serious. Like, you have to diet a certain way the whole month before you go. You have to. You can't be like drinking. You have to be totally sober.
Wow.
It's like a very, very serious thing. Because and it's a really like nice resort where, and it's a lot of people think like, oh, drugs. No, like plant medicine is different. The people that show up to these things in a lot of cases are nervous because they've never done drugs. They're just trying to fix something. Whatever it is, maybe a traumatic thing that happened in their life that they can't get over. And they're just like, I heard, they have a 99%, when you finish it, 99% of people said that it did help them. That's insane. That's why I say plant medicine and not drugs, because we don't have that kind of numbers in our pharmaceuticals. Like 99% of people that take Prozac don't feel better.
I want one of those like ads for that like ayahuasca thing, and it's like side effects include happiness, being cured, instead of side effects and cure eyesight loss, hearing loss, possible death. You're like, what? This is what? Yeah, this is Ozempic. What are we talking about here? It's a weight loss drug.
Dude, that was crazy. They put me on Prozac after the Sonobui accident, and they were treating PTSD according to them. And I was on it, I think 7 days later, I had a full-on panic attack on the medicine where I was like in my room with the door shut, feeling like almost like I was like, just like, it was bad, dude. It was really bad. And I was like, well, maybe that means I don't need the medicine. And I called the doctor and told him about it. And he was like, oh no, that's normal. Your body's adjusting to the medicine. I'm like, look, if my body's acting like this, like, I don't want to be on this medicine. Like, I don't want to adjust. Like, my body's telling me something here.
I was going to say, like, there are some medicines that you take and you're like, this feels worse. And they're like, nah, it's fine. Your body. No, fuck that. I was a lot better before this shit.
Yeah. No, I'll deal with my bad dreams. So just leave it. I don't want to be in my room in the fetal position during the day, hiding from nothing.
A little vitamin green.
Yeah. Just, okay. So the Tennessee Titans are the last team in the division that we're going to talk about. So they made a lot of additions. We've talked about a lot of them. The number one storyline this year is Will Levis. Is this going to work out? Because this is Will Levis's team. He's joining new offensive-minded head coach Brian Callahan, and they bring in that offensive line coach. Brian Callahan developed Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow was already kind of a star, and it's kind of hard because it's like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? It's like, is Mike McCarthy a really good play caller, or is Aaron Rodgers really good? Tom Brady, Belichick? We go on and on with these scenarios, and it's really hard to know. I thought Joe Burrow was going to work out with or without Brian Callahan, but he didn't. But he wasn't a bust, so I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt for right now, along with Callahan. Tennessee also has built up an impressive roster to support Will Levis. Levis was pretty inaccurate. He had a 58.4 completion percentage, 53.4 PFF accuracy percentage, both 32nd among qualified quarterbacks. Wow. Bryce Young finally didn't finish last in the category. If he, look.
Kyle loves this.
All I'm going to say about this is, I need to wait and see. Like, I have no bold prediction here about Will Levis, but make no mistake about it. This team, the kind of talent that they put on it, I've said it. I think that they could win 9 games. I think they can win 8 games. I think they could fight for a playoff game. None of that happens if Will Levis doesn't work. If Will Levis doesn't work, it's a lot of good pieces on a bad team. And the question is Will Levis going to be the guy? Is the first game that we saw of him Will Levis, or was the last 4 Will Levis? It's actually fascinating.
It is. And when we were talking about it Tuesday and you were like, I came away a little bit more impressed with the Titans than I went into it. Right. And it's true. I don't see them necessarily. I think you had them second in the division, and I'm pretty sure I had them last. I just feel like the Colts and the Jags are going to be better. But, just because they're last in the division doesn't mean that they're necessarily the bad team, right? Let's look at the AFC North last season. The Bengals came in last, but you had 3 of those top teams going to the playoffs. So that doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad team. You're in a tough division. And this is, I think, the AFC South possibly, right, going into this season. But yeah, with Will Levis, it is going to be very interesting because they made the switch from Tannehill to Will Levis last season. I mean, the writing, I think, was on the wall with Tannehill, especially after they had gotten Malik. What was his name? I forgot the quarterback. Malik Willis the year before, and Tannehill was talking about, like, I can still sling it, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to be a mentor. And then he kind of didn't sling it and sort of became a mentor, especially last season. So the writing was on the wall for Tannehill. I think everybody knew at the end of the season, okay, we're going with Levis here. So it is going to be interesting how he manages. Again, DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, the new addition, how much Tony Pollard plays a role into this offense to pretty much take a load off of Will Levis. Like, this offense behind Will Levis is going to be the most interesting thing about this Titans team, or at least the most talked about thing in terms of, fans amongst fans and even in the NFL. How is this quarterback and coach duo able to manage this offense with a DeAndre Hopkins, future Hall of Fame, possibly wide receiver, a guy in Calvin Ridley who has had one season off because of gambling and one kind of decent season with the Jaguars, And, the addition of Tony Pollard, you got some protection. It's going to be interesting for sure.
And then we're going to go to two different positions, running back and wide receiver. And we talked about how when you add one piece, it's a more of a surefire thing. But when you change an entire roster like the Jags did, there's a lot of question marks. The first big question mark is that the Titans are entering a season without Derrick Henry for the first time since 2015. They're instead expected to count on a backfield pairing of Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears. The question is how close the split will be. Is this 50-50? That remains to be seen. And then at wide receiver, you bring in Calvin Ridley and Tyler Boyd. The receiver, is Tyler Boyd going to be more of a 2? Is he going to stay at that 3? And DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley? Presumably, DeAndre Hopkins is going to enter as the top dog because he's freaking DeAndre Hopkins. Even at 32, he's still a decorated wide receiver who had 1,000 yards receiving last season. But these two positions, and plus, we still have to see what Treylon Burks is going to be. What's he going to be tasked with? They're going to have him trying special teams stuff, and I think one of the things that you're going to have is special teams used to be a demotion, and now special teams is a place where I think you'll see guys like Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, and with this new kickoff format, don't expect there to just be, oh, those are our players that we can afford to get hurt. Expect to see some stars back there, but that's a sidetrack. The wide receivers and the running backs, those are two major storylines going in.
Yeah, and especially the kickoff thing with Treylon Burks, because what is it? This is his 3rd season, if I'm not mistaken, and that was one of the reasons they got rid of AJ Brown, was because they thought they had like a number 1 wide receiver in Treylon Burks, and he just has not lived up to it. So it's going to be interesting. This is another wide receiver room that I think going into this season is going to be very interesting to watch. I think we talked about it on Tuesday, and I honestly I just had forgotten about Tyler Boyd. Real quick question for you, though. Do you think there's any chance Tyler Boyd maybe is kind of an afterthought after this season?
Like one and done?
Not necessarily one and done with the team, but like maybe isn't living up to what we are expecting him to do on the offense.
No, because I don't think Tyler Boyd, I know that I talk about him a lot, and that probably puts him on a lot of your radars out there, but I talk about him in a very specific way where he plays a very specific role, and that role is not where he's expected to be a wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 1. His wide receiver 3 position, which is really, really important. I mean, the Rams had a wide receiver 3 that was so important on that Super Bowl run. I'm blanking on his name. He actually went to Tennessee. He got traded to Tennessee. He was their wide receiver 3. Let me see really quick.
Van Jefferson?
Rams trade wide receiver to Titans. It was Robert Woods.
Robert Woods. Yeah.
So the wide receiver 3 spot is really important. I don't think he's going to have 500 receiving yards. I think he might have like 450, 500, maybe 500. But there's a lot of players, but you still need a good wide receiver 3. But I just don't think that the expectations are that he's going to get close to 1,000 yards receiving. So I think when the expectations aren't that high, you don't really underwhelm anybody when you don't reach him.
That's fair. Yeah.
So Tennessee in their offensive line is what we were just talking about with their new coach that's going to be looking at. That's going to be coaching them. Lloyd Cushenberry, who is the most improved player, according to PFF, on the Broncos roster last season, is now at center. The Broncos didn't keep him. They spend number 7 overall pick on J.C. Latham on the outside. Peter Skronowski is at guard. And on paper, this looks like an offensive line that's going to look good under Bill Callahan, who's Brian's father, which is funny enough. That you got a father-son duo on the same team, but he's not here because he is Brian's father. He's here because he's the most highly respected O-line genius in football. He receives the task of coaching this mixed bunch of players and improving that unit. And it does seem like it's an important job, especially because the number one, Will Levis, is on a kind of a prove it year. And it's really hard to prove anything when you don't have a line.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, you're like, he's not here because he's his father. And I'm like, well, sort of. He wanted to play with his son. Just a little bit. But no, you're right. You're right. God. He is one of the better offensive line guru coaches out there. And again, we talked about the inexperience. Skoronski, year 2. J.C. Latham, rookie season. They just brought in Cushenberry. With this coach, I mean, you're talking about a majority of this offensive line that is going to have to anchor Will Levis into a hopefully very good second year for him. So I think it's very important that they bring him in. Again, he wanted to play with his son, but it's just such a plus. You're sick. You're sick.
Wait a second. Hold on. Whoa. No, you said that, well, he kind of is here because of his father, talking about birth. But think about this for a second. I think you have it backwards, because Brian's father is Bill. I was saying Bill's not just here because of his son. So his son would have to have birthed Bill for what you're saying to be true.
Look, I'm not going to get into procreation here, but I'm saying, because that's a hot topic. All right. This is a hot topic in America, procreation. No, but I guess I meant more in the sense of like, he's on the Titans. And I was like, no, he's definitely here because he wants to be able to coach with his son. That's what I meant to say.
Okay. I misunderstood. Like LeBron and Bronny.
Yeah, like LeBron and Bronny in LA. Oh God, talk about nepotism right there. Anyway, yeah, bringing in him, offensive line guru. What a move. Could you imagine? No, he wouldn't have done it. I was going to say, could you imagine if he wasn't his son or he wasn't his father? Would he have come in? Probably not. Titans fans are probably like, thank God. Thank God, because we have a lot of uncertainty on the offensive line and even in Will Levis. So it's going to bring a nice little foundation for this team.
Yeah, Will Levis was probably the happiest person about the entire thing.
Mm-hmm,
oh man, I'm going to have time, because this offensive line was abysmal last year. They were awful. And you know who else is happy about it? Tyjae Spears and Tony Pollard. Man, it really feels like this team is heading in a really positive direction right now. And it's funny because it's like Mike Vrabel gets fired and a lot of people are like, what the hell are they doing? And now, just a couple months later, it's like, oh, okay, we'll see.
They do look better. Yeah.
It doesn't seem like anyone's, really mad about Mike Vrabel anymore. And then the last storyline is going to be corner, which you said. L'Jarius Sneed and Chidobe Awuzie take the lead in ensuring that they get to be the starters on this team. We're going to have to wait and see if they're going to mesh together. Like you've been saying, players that haven't played together, it makes a difference. L'Jarius Sneed was on the Chiefs for multiple years before he had, I think, what I would consider a breakout year last year. And now you move him right after it. Can he continue to have the same success he had last year? General manager Rand Carthen is going to hand select his defensive coordinator, which he did in Denard Wilson. Denard Wilson specializes in coaching DBs, and he wants to implement a switch on defense systematically to a heavy press coverage, which is a different philosophy than the Titans typically incorporated last season. So look, all this new, not just the players, not just the coaches, but even the scheme. You're definitely watching these corners and you're wondering, okay, because this is just like how we talked about Jacksonville's defense coordinator. You're watching Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen. This defensive coordinator, you're watching L'Jarius Sneed. You're watching the cornerbacks, because this is what he specializes in. So the cornerback, Caleb Farley, is looking at special teams to supplement his role. He had only played in 12 games last season since going number 22 overall in 2021. So can he find his niche in a different system with this new defensive coordinator who specializes in this kind of stuff? I mean, he was drafted that high for a reason, but if it's not the coach, maybe L'Jarius Sneed can coach him up. Man, I'm loving the vibes around this Titans team.
And you said it, dude. You get rid of the head coach, and then it seems like there's just, I don't know, everything's on fire. And then we talk about the changes they're making, shit, even to the cornerbacks, right? Like the defensive side of that, like specifically for the quarterback scheme, and all the additions and coaching and schemes and the offensive line whisperer pretty much. And then you're, as a Titans fan, you're like, okay, maybe we're not Super Bowl bound, but we're definitely going to be Super Bowl bound within these next few years. I think with all these additions, you really are just leaning on, like, is Tony Pollard going to be good? Will Calvin Ridley actually, produce? And what's up with Treylon Burks? And then of course the biggest question I think every team always faces is my quarterback gonna be the quarterback of the future? So a lot of good storylines there with the Titans, but yeah, no, definitely a lot more excited than I was going into Tuesday's breakdown of the AFC South for sure.
All right, well, that is our deep dive of the AFC South, and I think it's time for the
motherfucking, the goddamn motherfucking,
the motherfucking. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Chives with Kyle.
Yeah.
Today on the Chives with Kyle, we are going to be talking about Kenny Pickett and his move from Pittsburgh to Philadelphia. Change is a great thing.
Yeah.
Well, change can be a great thing. Change can also be a bad thing. Change is a good thing according to Kenny Pickett, though, and he experienced a lot of change this offseason, going from starting quarterback in Pittsburgh to a backup in Philly. Moving across Pennsylvania has given the 26-year-old new perspective. Speaking at the champion mindset at Shore Regional High School in New Jersey this week, Pickett said that the change has been positive. And I quote, "Change is a great thing. I'm going through it right now. I was in Pittsburgh for 7 years." Whoa. Oh, yeah, college.
College, yeah. You're like, what?
And now I'm over in Philadelphia. I think a lot of people probably have some negative views on change, but that's really just your outlook on it. I think if you keep a positive mindset, it'll all work out for the better. Of course, the Steelers drafted Pickett in the first round in 2022. However, he is not sticking around because it didn't go as planned. While he spearheaded several comebacks, those moments are far and few in between for a starting quarterback on a team with Super Bowl aspirations. So after an injury takes him out of the actions last season, Pickett didn't get his starting job back even when he returned healthy. Instead, Mike Tomlin went with Mason Rudolph. This offseason, the Steelers added Russell Wilson and, of course, your boy, the one, the only, the GOAT from Ohio State University, Justin Fields. Also, and then right away, you get reports that come out that Pickett didn't react very well to the news of bringing in Russell Wilson, and he gets shipped to Philly. And he said that he doesn't fret over those who doubts his willingness to compete. He took it personally. The world has enough doubters, Pickett said. There are plenty of people that are doubting. That's probably the majority of people out there in the media, fan bases, but coaches, family members. If you turn your mind around and try to prove them right in what they believe in you, you'll be in a more positive mindset. And look, I just want to say, the world is not out to get you, Kenny Pickett. The one thing I will say is that it seems like the world is full of doubters when you have given people reason to doubt. I mean, if you ask Patrick Mahomes what the world's full of, I don't know if he would say doubters. There's probably a lot of people that don't doubt Patrick Mahomes. There's probably a lot of people that don't doubt some of the top quarterbacks in the league, but Pickett never really panned out to be a top quarterback. So I believe him in the fact that he's saying, in my life, everybody's a doubter. I mean, there are nothing but doubters, and pretty much the only mindset Pickett can take as he attempts to rebuild his NFL career is this mindset that he's taking. My chives, I wanted to bring up his mindset, but I also wanted to ask you the question, is Kenny Pickett ever going to be a starting quarterback in the NFL again?
Oh God, what a really good question, because I really don't know how to answer that. I want to say yes. Just because I don't know, man. There was something about Pittsburgh and him, when he was there, the somewhat of a hometown kid, played at Pittsburgh for college. There was something there that I really liked, and I was really kind of hopeful about it. I was like, oh man, the Steelers, they got their guy. Kenny Pickett is going to be their guy. He's a fighter. He's this, he's that. And then it just didn't end up working out. And Steelers don't really generally do that. They don't get a guy and then just fucking dump him, right? It usually does take a few seasons for that to happen, but this happened. But I think he'll be a quarterback again. There's talks about him being better than Jalen Hurts in like spring practices. So that could be something that helps him kind of propel him to a starting role. We saw with like Mitch Trubisky go to the Bills and be the backup and then be the starter in Pittsburgh. So like, I think there's still a very, very good chance that Kenny Pickett starts a game as a quarterback.
Yeah.
Bill makes a great point here. Look at Geno Smith, right, with the Seahawks.
Tannehill. Yeah, have you seen Along Came Polly?
Absolutely.
When he's like, I don't know, man, I really feel like she might be the one. He's talking about Polly Prince. He's like, I really think that she might be the one. And he's like, yeah, I actually don't think it's going to work out, but I'm pulling for you, Rube. I do not think it's going to work out, but I'm pulling for him. But I can't talk about Kenny Pickett without sharing this GOAT of a moment, which I think will go down as his peak of his career. It actually happened in Pitt. And this play right here is why the rule exists that you are not allowed to fake slide.
Yeah. This is a very good moment right here.
Wait a minute. So he faked the slide.
A very good runner.
So good.
Don't sleep on those legs. Oh, he faked the slide. Sauce time.
That's
Pickett
so good.
did that work. Touchdown, Pitt.
Oh, that's so good.
What a moment.
So good. I know, right?
What a moment.
That right there, like you said, it changes the rule. But I was also like, why haven't quarterbacks done this before?
I always used to ask that. I used to always ask that. I would be like, why don't they just pretend that they're like, when they start like slowing down to go out of bounds and then come back in and run? I used to ask that as a kid all the time. I never got an answer. So when I saw Pickett do this, I tell you, it was so satisfying because I was like, somebody else thought it. I'm not the only one in the world that. And apparently you thought about it a lot too. I never understood that.
I did.
Never understood that. But yes, those are my chives with Kyle today. Kenny Pickett. I don't think it's going to work out, but I'm pulling for you, Rube.
He's pulling for him. Kyle's pulling for him. And we're pulling for all of you guys and thanking you guys for tuning in to today's episode here on the Only Football Podcast. Thank you to Bill, KC. We had Nash on here. We had who else? Liam on here. We had Liam on here as well. Hearts that go out. The Caitlin Clark hearts. To all you guys, please make sure to like this stream. We would appreciate it very much. Share it. Join us here on YouTube and go follow us on X at and now Rick down there. Kyle, where can they follow you on X? I'll let you know. Go follow him at NFL Kyle on X, and then go follow at Only Football Pod on X as well. And of course, our YouTube channels. Go check it out. Kyle's doing some awesome stuff over at his channel. Kyle, you're doing great stuff in your channel.
Thank you. I'm trying to make the Denver Bronco fan base happy and proud of me.
Other than that, we are going to come back on was it Monday or Tuesday? One of those days for sure. And then we're going to get back into breaking down the rest of the divisions. Next week, we're going to do AFC North, one of the more interesting divisions. I mean, they were interesting last year. They're going to be even more interesting now with some comments that Joe Burrow has made, all the quarterbacks there, some of the turnover. We're just going to see how awesome this division is going to be, but make sure to tune in to that next week. And again, follow us on YouTube, on Twitch, and on X. Go follow us. But again, thank you everybody for joining us. Make sure to like this stream and tell your friends, tell your family, tell a stranger on the street with their phone out to go follow the Only Football Podcast. Kyle, always a good time,
always
brother.
A good time. Always.